I was recently on Steam looking for a game to play when I suddenly saw one with the title Choo-Choo Charles. Basically, it had a picture of a terrifying spider train with a face. Now, I love creepy spider trains with faces, so I had to check this out. Clicking on the link, I went to one of the reviews which read, Choo-Choo Charles is a very bad train, but you have a machine gun. Good luck. And with that, I was hooked. I bought the game, downloaded it, and prepared my stream. The game starts off with a menu that features a bright yellow train sitting alone in what appears to be some sort of forest environment. The intro cutscene has your friend Eugene contacting you about something big that you might be interested in. Apparently, we own a museum that isn't doing too well, and this thing that Eugene has for us could help keep the museum afloat. We're a monster hunter, and this thing is what we're after. We meet up with Eugene rowing in a boat towards the island of Aranirum, which, as Eugene describes, is the island where miners dig their own graves, and also where this monster is located. Eugene tells us that Charles isn't the only thing to worry about here, whatever that means, and we're introduced to the tutorial. Basically, Eugene wants us to go inside of a shed where a train is located. The train will become central to destroying and killing Charles. We get a key and go back to the shed. The game's basic mechanics involves an upgrading system through a set of blueprints that will allow us to both repair and upgrade the train to better equip us. The gun mounted at the back of the train will allow us to defend ourselves from Charles. Unfortunately, the gun overheats super quickly, so we will have to be careful when facing him. Finally, it's time to move forward. There are 3 levers, and they are important when traversing through the island of Aranirum. One lever goes back, another goes forward, and the third one stops the train. It's best to learn to get used to these levers as soon as you start, because quick thinking is required later on in the game if you want to survive. As you can see here, I'll need a bit of practice before I get good at this game. Ooh, hoo, hoo. Oh my god, Jesus, that. You move forwards and the scenery is actually quite relaxing. Here's a clip of how relaxed I am. Oh, this is kind of relaxing. Here's me 5 seconds later being less relaxed as a giant sentient train demon from hell with giant spider legs attempts to murder me. Christ, Jesus, what is that? Hold on. The scene plays out with a tense theme titled The Hunt, which is a horrifying thrill ride of violins rising as the train attempts to destroy you, and is actually very nice to listen to. Suddenly, Charles hits the train multiple times, causing Eugene to fly in midair, hit the ground, and be stabbed by Charles. I accidentally ran him over multiple times, and after failing to park the train, I ended up just stopping the train over his body. Sorry, Eugene. He tells you to find his son and to find the eggs.
Can I offer you a nice egg in this trying time?
A confusing statement that will make a bit more sense the further you progress. I absolutely love this form of progression, by the way. After the tutorial, you're completely on your own and are free to explore any one of the multiple missions spread out upon the island. This game also has one of the coolest map mechanics I've seen. Basically, your train can be seen on the map, but you can actually leave the map up as your train moves. Be careful though, because if you don't pay attention, you could be attacked whilst looking at your map. I also enjoy how it's a 3D render of the entire island as well, and you can actually see enemy placements and structures if you zoom in. The game's difficulty is great as well, since you don't have anyone holding your hand to guide you since Eugene is dead, and unlike most open world games, the environment around you continues to move regardless of whether you look at the map or not, and it's a nice touch. Moving forward, we find our first base, containing a giant wooden crate filled with pieces of scrap metal. Scrap metal, as you'll soon find out, is the main form of currency in the game that is essential if you want to beat Charles. It's used for upgrading your train's damage resistance, attack damage, speed, and more importantly will be used to repair your train when it is damaged. Another cool mechanic shows up. Basically, there will be tracks throughout the game that will require you to exit the train, pull the lever, and select which direction you want the train to go towards. Notice how I said exit the train, and as we all know, you probably want to spend as little time outside the train given how fast your enemy is. We meet someone named Candace who gives us a key to a room located in her house containing scrap metal, which helps you upgrade your train. She also warns you not to talk to anyone with a mask. A note lies on a table detailing how the residents of the island are counting on Eugene to call for help in order to stop Charles. Apparently Suddenly Charles is becoming very aggressive and needs to be stopped. We use the scrap metal to upgrade our train and continue forward. We pause in front of a group of abandoned train carts and go inside of a cabin where this man called Daryl waits for us. Daryl offers us scraps of metal if we can unlock a box this man called Warren dumped into his yard. We enter a minigame to unlock the box and find a cryptic stone tablet that features some sort of giant spider attacking people. Giving it back to Daryl, he tells us to keep it and gives us some scrap metal. We later meet Helen, who tells us beating Charles will be difficult since he retreats whenever he's low on health. She then tells us that this dude called Warren, Charles III, is hiding 3 eggs around the island. We need to collect each of these eggs and put them inside of a temple, which will then entice Charles to fight us to the death, which is pretty cool. Later on we find a base made of wood where this guy called Sergeant Flint accidentally set his shed on fire, so we quickly douse the shed with a conveniently placed water tower. But before that, someone in my chat wrote a very interesting message and said that I'll be fine so long as I don't make the horn go off. After completing the mission, I unlock a weapon called bug spray and then proceed to test the horn I was told not to pull. So I stop in front of the mine we're supposed to collect the first egg from, but not before finding a document which tells us about a mining operation. After entering the mine, someone in the chat tells me that I have to hold on to the horn all the way in order to summon Charles. We then find a letter from Eugene warning Warren about something strange him and the miners found during the mining operations, and requests that Warren investigate the incident further. It's at this exact time that I freak out because above the surface, Charles is roaming around the area searching for me. Oh, hang on. Oh god. I find a can of green paint and enter a very cool opening into what seems like a base. I then hear whistling and get caught by one of Warren's many cultists. He chases me down as I apologize profusely, and once I manage to get far enough, I steal the first green egg and quickly run back to the train. I then decide to pull on the horn. Suddenly, I hear something. Is it Charles? Nah, it couldn't be. I take my time and decide to stop the train in order to move the direction of the tracks up ahead. And then I hear it. Charles. He quickly approaches and slams into the train multiple times, damaging it. I use my main gun, but it jams, so I quickly swap over to the fire weapon I just got. Without it, I probably would have died. He takes my train to 0 health before I have to quickly think on my feet and repair it. As I see Charles run away, I begin to think I'm safe, that I scared him off. So I decide to park my train inside the train shed we just passed when Charles quickly surprises us. He's not done with us yet. Quickly shooting him, I scare him off for real this time as he escapes back into the woods. Checking the health of my train, I'm back to 0% and I realize I narrowly missed getting killed by Charles. I went inside of a small home and read a note about how a person hid a special box only for Warren's men to build a base camp around it. Whoever this Warren person is, it seems like he's causing a lot of trouble for the inhabitants of the island. Turning behind me, I realize that this dude named Theodore has been sitting there the whole time, which is pretty awkward. He asks us to find the box and off we go. Oh yeah, I also learned you can paint your train different colors, so that's neat. I quickly get Theodore's box, but not before I'm caught by one of the cult members who attempts to gun me down. I make it on the train, and moving backwards, I accidentally run him over. We give the box to Theodore, who in turn gives us scraps. I have no idea what's in the box, but hey, we have 44 scraps, so I'm not complaining. I decided to move backwards in order to speak to this NPC. We also found another note which is quite interesting. It talks about the amount of money Warren is putting into mining infrastructure, which to the writer is quite bizarre since it's such a huge risk. It seems that Warren has some sort of fascination with the eggs scattered around the island, but why? This question remains unanswered as we proceed to enter a house by the docks and read a note about a failed evacuation. Basically, a bunch of people were evacuated to the mainland, yet a significant number still remained on the island. Oh yeah, Charles might also be able to swim. It makes Eugene's actions much more braver since he was willing to row a boat all the way to the mainland, contact us via phone booth, and then return back to the island in order to help save everyone else. Rest in peace, Eugene. We meet this guy called Santiago who plans on escaping, but he asks us to bring his journal back. I don't know why you would make that a priority, but sure thing. We then meet a guy called John Smith who wants to see Warren's empire fall, so he's willing to give us a rocket launcher so long as we help him get the ammunition. Using a stick of dynamite, I stick it onto the door of an old mine shaft and blow it open. I then proceed to push a minecart filled with explosives down a rail and follow it like an idiot, resulting in me getting blown up where I experienced my first death. Going back, we find the ammunition and a note with some testing records regarding the missiles. We go back to John Smith, who gives us the launcher, and testing the missile out, it's actually super strong, and I'm excited to use it on Charles' dumb face. Going to a lighthouse, we then find a note from Claire who describes that as she was going to do a routine check on the lighthouse, Charles ended up spotting her, ran her over, and broke her leg. Incidentally, it's at this moment that Charles begins going towards the lighthouse. This makes it very difficult to talk to Claire, but in short, she asked me to fix the lighthouse light so she can signal passing ships for help. Eventually, Charles leaves, and I decide to bravely leave the lighthouse and collect all the breakers needed to repair it, which according to the game's inventory description is an item that is legally required to be added to every horror game. We attach the breakers and fix the lighthouse. We then meet Greg, a crazy dude who has come up with a theory in which Warren is stealing the eggs so he can take over the world with giant spiders. We also learn that the miners on the island have been unable to destroy the last 3 since Warren took them. He then tells us about another mine containing an egg and gives us a key for it. Chet then keeps insisting that I pull the horn because it's funny, so I do it, which results in Charles chasing me. I manage to scare him off and make my way onto the next mine. I unlock a chest containing a bucket of blue paint, get a blue egg, and then get shot by a cult member. I decide to try again, this time pulling a lever which brings down a bridge and allows me to escape. With the green egg and blue egg in our inventory, we then make it to the Araniran Municipal building, which holds a note informing us about a wooden bridge. Apparently Charles is too afraid to cross it, but according to the note, if he's angry enough, he might just end up overlooking that. Then we meet Paul, Eugene's son. He's essentially the key that will allow us to kill Charles when the time comes. He doesn't know Eugene is dead, which is a bit awkward, but he gives us sticks of dynamite to attach to each of the pillars on a bridge. Once we do this, he gives us a key to the temple and tells us he will be on standby to detonate the dynamite should Charles come. We then find another note regarding an agreed plan from all of the island's residents. When the time comes, all the town's residents will pull the levers in order to get Charles to go to the bridge, and by then Paul will detonate the bridge in order to kill Charles. We then meet a person named Gertrude who offers us a weapon. Apparently her late husband Bob was working on a weapon before Warren's men stole the pieces needed to complete it and hid it away in a camp. She tells us we're free to use the weapon to defeat Charles so long as we name it Bob. We then find a church, and going inside we find a note detailing the ceremony for the day. It apparently involves a hypothetical discussion about whether a giant snake could beat Charles, asking for sacrifices, and some other really weird things. We also find a bucket of black paint, which makes our train look awesome. We then find a note written by Gail. Apparently, the residents of the island attempted to destroy the eggs, but Charles absorbed the energy released by the eggs and proceeded to kill a lot of people. After moving forward, I then hear Charles' ominous horn approaching, so getting on my train, I dash forward and blast Charles with a few missiles and bullets. Fortunately for me, I upgraded my speed, so even when my gun jammed, I was able to get away from him. Going back, I meet this guy called Ronnie, who offers to give us scrap metal if we find documents hidden away in a building that legally prove that Warren was acting poorly towards his workers. Ronnie will then use the documents to sue Warren when he gets back on the mainland. We then collect a can of green paint and find a note, presumably from Warren himself, about how he will need to strike gold if he ever intends on making back the money he lost from the mining operations. Finding and collecting the documents, we deliver it back to Ronnie, who gives us one piece of scrap metal. I then paint my train lime green and proceed to go on a rampage, burning most of the cult members and running over one. We find a note in the base questioning Warren's intentions of finding gold as a result of discoveries made about the temple. After entering the base, we then find the parts needed to assemble Bob, and Bob has to be one of the best weapons in the game. Bob has a pretty decent firing rate and it has a long shooting period before he jams, making it quite useful against Charles. We then go to another mine to look for the last egg. Basically, this mine involves you going down and up 2 makeshift elevators in order to escape the cultists. I ended up hearing Charles, but I was perfectly safe underground, so I didn't need to worry about him. I collect the red egg, and as I'm escaping, I end up dying. When I respawn, I end up getting chased by Charles himself, which is kind of good since I can test out my new weapon, but kind of bad because I can't get the egg. The gun is actually pretty good. It fires at a decent rate before it jams, it's long range, and has a high attack stat. Even better, I had focused on upgrading my train speed, so the majority of the time I was able to put quite a distance between me and Charles and scared him off much faster than anticipated. We then get the journal for Santiago and meet up with Sasha. For whatever reason, there's a ghost around her camp that keeps placing drawings around the lamppost scattered around the area. What occurs next is a pretty cool moment where you have to run away from a ghost while collecting 8 pages. If the ghost is near you, you will see and hear static, and being touched by it won't kill you, but it will bring you back to the start of the camp. After collecting the pages, we give them back to Sasha, who in turn gives us a decent amount of scrap. I then move backwards, give Santiago his journal, to which he says this.
For your own good, that you didn't peek inside.
Oh god. Whatever that means. We then go into a swamp where we find a note for a stew recipe. It has the word salt written 3 times as well as meat listed as any kind, human included. We meet Lisbeth Murkwater, who's an actual witch. She wants a carcass for her stew and tells us it's located on a small island. Oh yeah, there's also a swamp monster named Barry. He won't hurt us so long as we stand still when he's close to us. Just as I'm about to go on the island, Charles nearly kills us. Luckily for me and the witch, we're able to escape just in time, and we sort of just hang out and chill for a bit before he leaves. I really like moments like this in the game where Charles is sort of sniffing around the building looking for different ways to get to you. It makes the structures feel that much more important. Anyway, I swim to the island, avoiding Barry of course, get the fish carcass and give it to the witch, who gives me scraps. Upon parking my train, I nearly get killed by Charles hiding in a shed as he attempts to get to me. After he leaves, I talk to Tony, who offers us some scrap metal in his barn. It's then at this point that Charles comes back, and this time he manages to kill me. The way he kills you is terrifying, not even giving you a second to react before flinging you into the air and eating you whole. Anyways, I respawn, go to the barn, collect the scraps, and then complete what I consider to be the weirdest mission in the whole game. We find a note that appears to just be random ranting about pickles and meet the pickle lady. She's hidden her pickles inside of a locked chest, but unfortunately she's lost her key and needs us to picklock the chest. Inside the cave, we find some more strange ramblings about pickles before we unlock the chest and bring her the pickles. At this point, I've completed every mission in the game except for one. We upgrade our train quite a bit, so when Charles comes to attack us, he won't even stand a chance. When we arrive at the temple, I then ask chat to vote for which color I should use, and it ends up being a close tie with purple and black. Black ends up winning by just 1 vote. We go to the temple, unlock the doors, and just as we're about to put the final egg in, we see Warren for the first time. He shows up with his cult followers, and we're outnumbered. But very quickly, we place the final egg into the pyramid, causing a giant beam of light to shine into the sky. Charles absorbs the power of the eggs, and chaos ensues as everyone begins running for their lives. We then see Warren get eaten by the creature before making it on the train ourselves. The final battle is absolutely epic. Charles is super fast, super strong, and every time he takes a large amount of damage, he teleports away from the player whilst pulsating electricity around him. It's a tense fight as I run around the train quickly swapping weapons every time one of them jams, and towards the end I shoot him in the face with a missile as we go over the bridge we previously struck with dynamite. It launches Charles up in the air, and as he falls, his face gets impaled by a long wooden beam, blood pouring out all over the ground. After all this time, he is finally dead, and everyone can rest easily. But it's not over yet, as we see from the end credit scene. We slowly zoom in on an egg we miss, and to our horror we see that there are hundreds if not thousands of eggs that still remain. On a final note, this game was amazing, and the fact that it was made by a single person makes it even more cooler. I really enjoy the mechanics behind the game, and each time I ride that train, I either feel super relaxed by the scenery or super tense by what may be up ahead, which is a great form of contrast to keep the player on their toes. My only problem has to be the stealth missions. They aren't really stealth missions since you have a lot of health, and even if you're caught, you're still able to outrun the cultists while being able to recover your health relatively fast. It would have been more interesting if the cave was bigger and if an encounter with Charles took place where he tried to grab you. But then again, this was made by one person within a very small time frame, and what was accomplished is pretty impressive. I definitely recommend checking it out on Steam because you can complete the missions in any order you like, and it also has a lot of replayability value with its hidden notes, interactive side missions, and of course buckets of paint. Final verdict? Fun game with a giant spider train.